Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Steele's How To series. In this video, we're going to be upgrading all the door glass weather stripping on this 87 Chevy R10, and our parts as well as our videos are DIY focused, so we're going to walk you through every step in the process. Let's get started. Now these square body Chevys have three major components that seal the door glass. Your vent window seal, which goes along the entire perimeter of your vent window, your run channel, which goes along the outer edges of the door glass, and your window felts, which sandwich the glass and keep it from rattling. Now, if you're going to want to take your vent window out, you have to take the door panel off, you got to take the frame out. So if you're going to be doing that, you want to replace all these seals at the same time. So we'll show you how to do that. One thing to note before we get started is there are two different vent window seals that were offered on these trucks, a 2-piece and a 1-piece. So the 1-piece and the 2-piece both cover the entire perimeter of the vent window and they don't interchange, so you want to select the right one. The easiest way to tell the difference is on the 2-piece, the bracket at the top is completely exposed, and on the 1-piece, it's covered in rubber. You may be able to see the pivot point from the exterior of the vehicle. That bracket is actually what you're looking for. So now that we know what style we have, we can get our parts and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the door lock knob, and then there are several components holding this door together. There are some screws along the bottom of the panel, inside the armrest and behind the door handle. Then you just move the panel up and off of the frame. Now this truck has power locks and windows, so we'll remove those terminals with a flathead screwdriver. Be sure to disconnect your battery beforehand. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is remove this run channel. You can just grab it and pull, and then you fish it out from the bottom, and it goes all the way around. I'm getting ready to move the outer belt line. So this seal just pulls up, and that is all that's holding it on is these clips. There's a couple screws that hold the vent window frame to the front of the door and a bolt at the bottom that holds the bracket. As a pro tip, always organize and mark your screws and bolts so you know exactly where they came from when you go to put it back together. To remove this vent frame, you can actually scoot the door glass back inside of the door, which will give you a little more space to maneuver this frame out. But you're pulling down and straight back, and that will release it from the front where the frame goes inside of the door. Once it is released, you will be able to pull it up, and then you'll want to rotate it. So the bottom of this frame has a J-shaped bracket, so we want to make sure that it's not getting hung up on the wiring or the bracket that connects the side mirror to the inside of the door panel. It can be a little tricky, but once you get it rotated, you can pull it straight out of the door. Now that we've got our vent frame out, we can take a closer look at what we're dealing with. There's some dry rotting going on with this seal that has little cracks in it, and where there's cracks, water can get in. So if you have dry rotting going on right here, this is what could be underneath it. So we're going to replace all of these seals, and the first thing we need to do is remove this spring assembly. So what I like to do is also take a picture of this spring assembly before I remove everything so you can see the order that the nuts and washers are on. But what we'll do is go ahead and release this wing washer so we can take this nut off. And then I like to lay these things out in the order that they came off. We have a washer with an oblong hole, and then a kind of fabric washer. Now to remove this post, we have to remove the hinge pivot. So these washers are still holding this post on, so you may have to kind of work with those. So to remove the weather stripping out of this, we have to remove these tabs. Once we got the division post removed, we can just pull the weather stripping. It's just held in with pressure. And now we'll go back and clean this all up. So the first thing we're going to do is line up this notch with the hinge pivot. And this seal is just held in with pressure. So we tuck one edge in, flip it over, then we just tuck that lip into the channel. And you just do that all the way around. So we're running into a bit of an issue trying to get this upper chunk of rubber into the top corner of this frame. So we're going to drill out this rivet to allow us some more space so we can install the seal. So we realized that this channel is crushed on the end here, and that's why the original one had that chunk of rubber stuck into it. And that, since it's crushed, is not allowing us to seat the new rubber. So instead of us cutting into this rubber and trying to make a new channel, we're just going to cut off this piece right here where it's crushed. It's going to be covered in rubber, it'll be sealed up, so it'll suit our needs. So what we're going to do is kind of get a test fit, get it lined up with the hinge bracket here, and you get one side set in, and then you tuck in the other side. And I like to use a plastic tuck tool so it doesn't scratch anything. And remember, this whole thing is held in with pressure, so it is tight, but all you need to do is push one little bit in at a time and it'll lock in. The corner is another important part. You want to make sure that you have the part seated all the way. So once you get everything tucked in, you'll be able to push a little bit onto the part to make sure that you get as much material into that corner as you can. The main areas you want to focus on in the weather stripping to make sure everything's lined up right is the hinge bracket, your pivot point, and your corner, and of course your ends. So where that channel, that C channel comes around the corner, they have one piece of aluminum or steel, whatever it is, to get bent around so that radius changes a little bit in there, so it gets tight, but it will go in. So now you can see everything's in that corner. So you want to see if your pivot hole is lined up correctly, and ours is. So we're good to go there. So your end, you'll have to kind of fish through the frame. You can see there's a notch here on the weather stripping that sits right in this notch for the frame. So you can get that lined up. And then on the end, it's just a little bit more. So you tuck that piece in and this chunk of rubber fills that gap. So this edge of the weather stripping right here will line up whenever we go to rivet it back, and then we'll be all done. So I'm just squeezing this together to get that rivet as tight as possible. And you can come back and sand that a little bit flatter if you like. But just a pop rivet there will hold everything in place. And now we've got our seal installed in the frame. So once you go to install your division post, you can actually bend it a little bit in the middle, because you're going to want to seat this L shape into the notch that's made into the main seal on both sides. So you can bend it a little bit in the middle. Get everything tucked into place. And we will squeeze it all together, and we will bend these tabs over. I do like to kind of just get them started, and then we can go back and flatten them out after we're done. All right, so as we get ready to install the glass back into the frame, you want to have the glass positioned how it would be if you were to open it, which is the front end towards the interior of the vehicle. And then it just slides straight through into the pivot joint. One thing you want to pay attention to is where those washers were. Really, the only unique washer is this D-shaped washer. You want the flat side of this D-shaped washer pointing towards the front of the vehicle or the front of the vent window. So this one goes on first, and this is where that picture comes in handy. And then beneath that D-shaped washer, you had just one of the regular flat ones. And as it slides through, you can rotate it over to make sure you have your pivot hinge in the correct place. So you have to get it fully seated. And then we can kind of give a quick visual inspection of everything, make sure everything's lined up correctly and sitting where it's supposed to be. So you can check that alignment. So on the bottom, you have your regular washer, then the one with the oblong hole, then your spring, then your locking washer, which also has the oblong hole, and then your nut. Now, the more you tighten this is a tensioning spring. The more you tighten this, the harder it's going to be to open your vent window. So you can kind of give it a few twists. We'll put this rivet back, and then we'll get the tension corrected. Now, this rivet is not a pop rivet, it's a spread rivet. So this and the tool will actually come with the weather stripping in its package, but essentially what we'll do is put it in the vise, line everything up, and then press it so it spreads that open. Now that we have our glass installed, we can kind of see that the window's a little loose, so we're going to tighten this back up and provide some tension there. You want it fairly tight, but you want to be able to move it easily. So that looks pretty good right there. And then the last thing is with this locking washer, you'll just want to line your nut up with it so it has the right place to bite, and then we can bend these tabs back over. Now, before we install our vent window back into the truck, we want to go ahead and do the run channel that goes along this division post. So these run channels are left and right, and this tab is really the only difference. This tab is designed to hold on to the vent frame so it doesn't come out, and you can bend it over the entire frame, these two pieces, but ours is set up just to go right in between these two, and there's enough space for us to do it. So that'll get seated right there. That'll hold the run channel in place in the front corner. And then the rest of this run channel is just pressed in. What I kind of do is pinch both sides, and then I also take a tuck tool to make sure it's seated fully. This is just held in with pressure. There's no adhesive or anything. And this goes all the way down into the door Now to put the vent window back in, it goes in just the way it came out. You have to get that bracket into the door and then feed that post down into the door. Just like when it came out, you'll want to lean it back to get it into the right place. Make sure everything's lined up. And then press it forward. Got our screw holes lined up. So we'll attach the screws and the bolt down at the bottom to get the frame set in place. And then whenever you are installing it, it just gets put in just the way it came out. So we're going to set these screws. And now we can finish up with the rest of this run channel. So for the run channel, just like behind the division post, it's just held in with pressure. So you can just pinch it and put it into the channel. There is one clip right here that goes up into the top of the door. Now up in the corner, you want to try to push some material into the corner so it doesn't droop down. So we'll kind of get this mostly set in place, and then we'll drop this tail down into the door. And then we'll work it into the channel down here as much as we can. One thing that you can do is remove the bolt on the bottom side of this channel, which will help relieve some of the pressure off the back of the glass to give you more space down inside the door. So next I'm going to connect the window controls so I can bring the window up to set everything down in the bottom. So we'll roll it back down now that we got our channel set, and then we will reinstall our window felts and our door panel. So to install the outer belt line, it's just these clips along the edge, and they only just get pressed down into the slots on the inside of the door skin. So you can line up the front side and then just work your way down. So this inner belt line is just held on with these clips. They just press down and come out. If you need to, you might be able to use a flathead screwdriver to help pry them off. This is plastic, so you want to be careful with it. And then to install the new piece, it's the same concept, except you're going to be pressing up. All right, so the first step to putting this door panel back on is reconnecting these controls. So now that we got those controls, this door panel, you've got to get the door handle through it. So you can scoot it back, and then it goes over. Make sure your lock knob comes through. All right, and just like all the things that we took off, you just replace your hardware, your door lock knob, the bezel. So we got the handle bezel in, and then we're going to replace all the hardware, which is when it's real handy to have marked where these things came from. And that wraps up this episode of Steele's How To series, where we upgraded all of the door glass weather stripping on this 87 Chevy R10. Vent windows can be an intimidating task, and a lot of people don't want to try it. But a lot are also done just like you saw in this video, so if you take your time and stay organized, anybody can do it. And also, everything that we used today will be listed below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more how-to videos, and as always, thank you for watching.